Hi guys, welcome back to the Rechalea podcast. We are back. I was away. I sometimes drop off the face of the planet because I have a 7-month-old who's so delish and cute. Kananara. His name is Yoav Mordechai. I had this amazing conversation with someone who was at my house yesterday about the pressure we all feel to do and to accomplish and to be productive. We worship productivity. That's something I always say to myself. I don't worship productivity, I worship God. I don't worship productivity, I worship God. I've had to say that to myself a lot recently because as an ambitious person, as someone who wants to create and fulfill my potential, and the fire's always roiling and broiling in my stomach, and I have this engine in me that I want to do things. There, in a woman's life, as women, we have all these life cycles, all these things that I don't want to say they hold us back, God forbid, but they demand that we slow down because you can't do them without presence. So, raising my 7-month-old, he's going to be 8 months, which is crazy, this Friday night in Mir Hashem. He's like the light of our lives. We're so obsessed with him. And I always remind myself that I worship God. I don't worship productivity. It is very difficult for someone who is, always going. All of a sudden, this precious soul needs you 24/7. I mean, my son is up pretty much all night. I'm not joking. I've tried to sleep train him. I feel too bad. I can't listen to him cry. Everyone's told me you need to sleep train him, but hearing him scream his head off is just so painful to me that I failed doing that many times. So he's up with me in my bed. I have to feed him multiple times a night. When he's up in the daytime, we're playing. And as someone who likes to read the news and learn Torah, and I want to use my mind, playing with blocks for 3 hours, you can sometimes feel like, what am I doing? Is this how I'm spending my life? I'm playing with toys. There is that voice in your mind. And I was talking about this with this young woman yesterday because she was telling me all these people online, me included, myself included, it looks like everything's perfect all the time. And how do you get so much done? And I said to her, I just took off a month and a half. I didn't show my face for a month and a half. My son needed me, and I worship God, not productivity. And God tells us that being a parent, and God doesn't even have to tell me, I feel this in my soul, but I'm happy God told us too, because some people don't feel that, our babies come first. There is nothing more important. I would be willing to give up everything to raise my son, literally everything. He's that important, nothing else exists besides him. And that's how it feels most of the time, all of the time. Of course, we just have to strike a balance. And I was talking to her, it is really hard to play with blocks for 3 hours when usually, you're showing your face and speaking and speeches and classes, and all of a sudden, you're mashing up banana and yogurt 3 times a day, or making soups to blend, and that's your whole day, feeding and changing diapers and cleaning and washing. So I told her, no, I'm not productive all the time. I'm not doing things and super powered up all the time. Actually, I've done nothing really for the past month and a half besides raise Yoav Mordechai. And that includes, 6 hours of playing or taking walks outside. And I just felt he needs me fully. And I need time to be home and not distracted by the news, which can really get to you. So that's where I've been. We had a really great conversation. I'd love to have her on the podcast. I'm not going to say who she is because I didn't tell her I'd mention her name. But we should talk about it more, because being a woman is difficult in that way, where, men, of course, they're out making money for their families, but so they're out anyways. But there's all this talk about women are behind and there's no female presidents and blah, blah. A lot of it is just biology. All this time I felt, of course, there's been oppression and, women weren't allowed to be doctors or lawyers or we could be teachers. We couldn't own land. We couldn't have our own money. I get that. At the same time, there is this element of God's calling on us, the things that we're responsible for, raising our kids, making them food. I do believe that, it's my duty to make sure there's always yummy home-cooked meals at home. And we're just home more, and it can be very difficult. And I always think to myself, we women are like the moon, right? We wax and we wane. Sometimes we're in our fullest, most glorious power, and we're shining this beautiful incandescent light on the heavens and the earth. And sometimes we're hardly there and you don't see us at all. And we need to disappear for a little bit, even if you don't have kids. Like think about when you get your period. Like there's a few days where your creative energies are gone. It's like you need to be in bed. You need to not talk to anyone. No one can touch you. You're just, you're angry. Even my pregnancy was like that for like 9 months, just upset a lot. And I was so sick. Guys, I was vomiting like 4 times a day for 9 months straight. And that I'm still going through that. Like, you know, motherhood, it didn't stop with pregnancy, it didn't stop with birth, it didn't stop with postpartum. It's that struggle of like, this is where you're needed right now. And even if you're used to something else, being out in the world all the time and doing all this cool stuff, your son is, my son is the most important thing. Nothing even comes close. I cannot believe how much I love him. I will start crying now. He's so sweet. I am crying now. Okay. He is such a sweetie. We're so in love. So I've been struggling with that myself. And it's so funny because this girl came over yesterday to help me with my studio. And we were talking about that. And it was such an important conversation, which we should have another time, like a real conversation. So that's where I've been. I've been fulfilling my duty, my most important duty as a mom, taking care of my baby and wiping his butt all day and feeding him and playing with him and giving him an hour-long bath every night because that's the only way he'll go to sleep, and taking walks and teaching him how to crawl. And it's the most beautiful thing ever. But we're back because we're trying to find that balance. So I'm going to bring on my brother Mendy in a minute, but I want to discuss this Tucker Carlson podcast that he had where he went to Israel, didn't leave. He's such a freaking, he is so annoying. He's like a human troll. Like it's just his job to troll. Oh, he makes me miserable. I can't listen to his maniacal laugh, his crazy eye. He has crazy eyes for real. And I was just talking about this on Instagram. He has this deranged obsession with Jews. He is crazed in the mind by Jews. It's such a weird thing to be Jewish in 2026. I'm sure Jews have felt like this for, you know, the past 3,500 years. To watch someone obsess about you and your history and question whether you're even Jewish, you're actually Khazars from Turkey, and it's just crazy. And I was talking on Instagram about this because, first of all, if you didn't watch it, I said this before, you need to go watch it. Tucker Carlson's Israel podcast with Ambassador Huckabee. So important. I watched it a few times and I actually I'm studying it. I want to understand these claims, these libelous, evil claims against us Jews, and I want to know how to respond to them. And in my mind, I was going through, you know, all the things Tucker mentioned and the way that guys, it's so funny. He doesn't even try to hide the fact that he's obsessed with Jews and he doesn't try to hide the fact, like he has no shame in the fact that he doesn't care about truth. He sat down in that chair opposite Ambassador Huckabee with an agenda. Like he every word he uttered, every question he had, it was all like taking him on a path to his agenda. Like he didn't want to get to the truth. He had a point that he wanted to get to at the end, which is that Jews are dishonest and Israel is evil and Jews are satanic and they are at war with Christian values and Christians should not support Israel and Christians should hate Jews. That is all he wanted to prove. And he was building that claim the whole time. So he wasn't interested in actually getting the truth from anyone. And I was talking on Instagram today about how, if you guys ever studied or read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which was a propagandistic text that was published around 1902. And it's so sad to think that lies that are so stupid, truly so stupid, led to the massacre of Jews in Russia, everywhere, worldwide, throughout Europe. Like, I remember my dad always saying in his speeches, my dad is Rabbi Shmuley, if you don't know, he always said, like, who would believe the lie that Jews killed God? That has spilled more blood. That lie has caused more Jewish blood to be spilled than any other lie. But people believed it, and they killed Jewish children for it. And so the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, it was filled. I'm gonna give you some of the lies that it was filled with. These lies cost so many Jewish families. They led to the destruction of husbands and wives and loving marriages and children, and it's just so crazy. This book made its way across Russia and worldwide. It spread throughout the world. And Tucker Carlson, oh, and by the way, before we talk about Tucker, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, Russia was primarily Christian. Europe is primarily Christian. America is primarily Christian, but, we're talking 1902. And the goal of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was to separate Jews and Christians, to create division between Jews and Christians, to make Christians despise Jews, distrust Jews, to make them suspicious of Jewish people, and it was beyond successful. We still don't really know who published it. Who wrote it. We don't know who wrote it. It was linked to the Russian government at the time, but we still don't know. And anyways, these are the points in this evil book. So it's a book of Jewish conspiracy theories. Again, remember, with the intention of dividing Jews and Christians. So number one, Jews were secretly planning to control governments around the world, so take over foreign governments. Jews were behind worldwide perversion and were in a war with Christian morality and ethics. Jews viewed themselves as chosen, and therefore, because they viewed themselves as chosen, they viewed non-Jews as slaves. They also, in this book, claim that Jews were stirring revolutions worldwide to weaken societies and to make themselves stronger. Obviously, Jews control the media, they control the press, they control banking. There's, do you remember, guys, that Nazi propaganda of the worldwide Jew? It's like this Jew with his hands around the globe. So that really comes from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This actually the Nazis believed in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion like their Bible. The worldwide Jew with his arms around the globe, that there was like an international network of Jews that help each other at the expense of everyone else. And it goes on. This is just a part of the Protocols. Okay, this is part of the book. Again, always remember, with the intention of making Christians, who made up most of the population, despise Jewish people. And I want to read to you, if you watched my Instagram reel today, this is going to be a little bit repetitive because we talked about this on Instagram today, but this book, Israel, I'm just looking at myself on my computer. We're good. This book called Israel, it's called Israel, A Concise History of a Nation Reborn by Daniel Gordis. He writes about the consequences of Jewish conspiracy theories that were spread about Russia through the Protocols. There's so much hatred in Russia against Jews because of these lies. Like, who would believe that Jews were behind worldwide perversion? Like, that's such an odd thing to believe. It's so, like, I would never believe that about anyone else. But they did believe it, and because they believed it, look at what happened to Jews in Russia because of these lies, things that weren't even real, they weren't even true. It's just... Okay, so we are on page 48 of this book. What followed was, this is in 1903 Russia, so a year after the Protocols came out. What followed was murder and massacre during the night of Russian Jews. 50,000 Jews now fell prey to barbarism. A Jewish boy's tongue was cut out while the 2-year-old was still alive. Meyer Weissman, blinded in one eye from youth, begged for his life with the offer of 60 rubles. Taking his money, the leader of the crowd, who was Christian, destroying his small grocery store, gouged out Weissman's other eye, saying, "You will never again look upon a Christian child." So they blinded him and said, "You will never again look upon a Christian child." Nails were driven through their heads, bodies were hacked in half, bellies split open and filled with feathers. Jewish women and girls were raped, and some had their breasts cut off. This was the Kishinev pogrom of 1903 in Russia. So just imagine, Jews control the world, and a month later, Jewish girls and women are having their breasts cut off and raped, all because of lies. Now, what Tucker is doing, I'm going to tell you what Tucker is saying. It's identical. It's just a modern version of the protocols. It's blaming the Jews and Israel for all of America's problems, for all of the world's issues. It's all the Jews, right? So, for example, Epstein, everyone's talking about the Epstein files. He was connected to Ehud Barak, right? The former prime minister of Israel. He has one connection with this prime minister, and all of a sudden, Israel's behind everything. It's all Israel. And Tucker talks about this. So I'm gonna tell you what Tucker mentions, not just in this podcast, but in general. And you're gonna see it is the exact same thing as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It's just a modern day version, and it has the same goal though. The goal is to make Christians hate Jews, and it's working. Tucker is succeeding, as you can see at all the turning point events with these young Christian men, specifically men, young men, asking about USS Liberty, asking about why Israel has occupied our government. Things that are so insane, that are so perverted and backwards, but that's the only thing they're focused on. So Tucker mentions that Jews are behind worldwide pedophilia, like Candace Owens. They both say this, or they imply it, that Jews were behind Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile ring, right? That Jews and the Jewish state have occupied the U.S. government. When they say Israel, they're talking about Jews. We know that. That Jews pull Western nations into their Middle Eastern wars, and they make these Western nations fight their wars with the intention somehow of taking over the Middle East and maybe even world domination. That Jews control media and banking. That Israel is intentionally killing and genociding Christians in Israel and Gaza. That Jews are genocidal, that they're killers, that they're bloodthirsty. And more than anything, and this is the most important thing, and this is what Tucker has talked about the most in the past few months, is that Israel, aka the Jews, worldwide Jewry, are on a campaign. They're in a war with Christian morals and ethics. That Jews are going to war with Christianity, not Christians, but Christianity. That Jews hate Christianity. That's why Tucker always says, but we Christians believe that we're supposed to love our neighbor like ourselves, and we believe in not killing. But Israel wouldn't understand that because they don't follow the New Testament. It's a perfect example. The 10 Commandments that say do not murder. First of all, it's do not kill. It's do not murder, which Candace Owens, the wicked, just got wrong. She said the Bible says do not kill. No, it doesn't. It says do not murder. But anyways, that comes from our Torah. So of course we know about it. Of course we follow it. It's our Torah. You actually adopted it from us. But Tucker's trying to make a point. The Jews are at war with Christianity. And I want you guys to just notice this and read about it and research it and delve into it, because it's a phenomenon. It's not new. It's just a regurgitation of something old and dangerous and deadly, which is what's happening now. Before we go on, and I invite my political genius, Torah scholar, holy brother Mendy onto this podcast. Before that, I want to tell you about our sponsor today, Yad Ezra V'Shulamit. Guys, we all go through hard times in our lives. That's just expected in this interesting life, this wondrous, mysterious life. But most of us, thank God, will never experience the hellish suffering and pain that a woman experiences when she loses her husband, or that a child experiences when they lose their father. Right now, there are thousands of families in Israel who are facing that reality right now. They have lost their provider, their protector, their strength, their rock. Yad Ezra V'Shulamit feeds more people in Israel, impoverished families, than any other organization. They feed millions of people every single year. Right now, they are raising money for their Purim campaign. Purim is coming up, this Jewish holiday, which is supposed to be joyous and happy. We're celebrating overcoming yet another genocidal maniac who wanted to kill us. And it's a time where we dress up and we eat delicious food. And there's many families who are facing Purim without their husbands and fathers, and they cannot afford not just the basics, but things that aren't basics, like costumes for children. Every child should have a Purim costume, because that's what makes us happy and joyous on Purim. Yad Ezra V'Shulamit needs your help. They're raising money now. You can donate at www.yadezra.net/Purim26RLT. That's www.yadezra.net/PURIM26 RLT for Rachalea Taktuk. The link is in my bio. Okay, everyone. I have forced my brother Mendy onto my podcast yet again. Hi, Mendy.
Go on, Bubba. Rachalea.
Rachalea. Yeah, my family still calls me Bubba, as you guys know. So Mendy and I are going to get into an amazing conversation about Tucker the Wicked. But before we do that, Mendy, you have a new book coming out, which is so exciting.
Thank God. That's right. May 5th, please God,
May
release.
5th. And just before I ask Mendy to tell us about the book, because I've read parts of it, and Yoav Mordechai, my 7-month-old, because I'm blaming him, right? It's terrible. But I'm going to read the whole thing if I wasn't like cleaning and cooking and taking care of him all day. But the parts that I have read are so spectacular. And Mendy, Mendy is truly one of the smartest people alive. And he has this amazing combination that I have told you before. Sorry, Mendy, I'm going to embarrass you. But you have this political genius mixed with the wisdom and holiness of Torah scholarship, which is so rare and unique. And
that's pretty embarrassing, Bubba.
So can you tell us about your book before we start?
Well, first of all, it's so good to be back on this show. I still hear from people that saw me. You have an incredible impact. I don't think even you realize how many people you reach and how many people you inspire. I'm your big brother, but I'm your biggest fan.
Oh.
I love seeing what you do, Bubba. You're so, I'll embarrass you too. You've got such incredible talent and such an important voice in a very toxic, social media environment. You're a rare voice of truth. This book is coming out May 5th. It's called Comeback Nation. It's a book that chronicles Israel's really dramatic and miraculous turnaround from October 7th and the terrible massacre until the hostages, more or less until the release of the last hostages, Ron Kvili being the last one, just last month. The book is not just a history. It contains a lot of commentary. We try to explain, first and foremost, how October 7th happened, and how October 7th itself pulled Israel out of the terrible toxic habits it had fallen into in its doctrines of national security that had allowed that massacre to take place. So we frame that as kind of the seeds of the miracle. That's how we understand it, that everything that followed October 7th was only possible because of the searing lessons that were taught to Israel on that terrible, terrible day. It's an important book. I think it puts forth a lot of critical analyses that are essential to anybody trying to understand what happened. It's also a thrilling book. The story is way larger, and the heroism and strength of Israel over these past 2 years is something that the news and different bites of social media cannot capture piece by piece. You've got to see the entire tapestry. And that's what we try to do, is bring it all together. Often there were so many things happening at once that it was impossible to really understand the different processes going on. The amount of strikes in Syria, for example, with everything going on in Lebanon and Iran and beepers and massive air campaigns, people didn't understand that Israel waged a full-scale war in Syria. And that might have been the most lasting transformation of this entire war, would be that Bashar al-Assad, who had been him and his father have been brutalizing Syria for decades, are now gone. Something that Syrians themselves could not do in 11 years. Israel did in just over 11 months. It's really remarkable. And we will be seeing more and more of the impact of these past 2 years, not just on Israel, but on the region and the world. It's only coming into focus now with the visit of Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, yesterday.
You were there, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be there and to see not just his love for Israel, which is inspiring, but to see the incredible transformation in Israel's status is absolutely mind-blowing. Netanyahu meets with a man like Modi, of a country that has 1.4 billion people. Israel has less than 10, many of whom are very much against the actual state. Israel is a tiny country, but it's in every way, it's on the level of India. It's incredible to see a country with a $4 trillion GDP meeting with Netanyahu, not as a client state, but as equals. Israel met with India completely standing on its own 2 feet, as if it were there, as if India needed us as much as we need them. And that is something that would be, I think, impossible to even imagine before this war. Things will never be the same for Israel. Israel has achieved a permanence, and this book tells exactly how.
That's unbelievable. By the way, I saw BB wearing this like cool outfit. Itamar and I were looking when he met Modi.
Oh, that
Found him this
amazing
morning.
vest! I know.
Yeah,
It's
not.
a real bromance between the two of them.
I know they have
I
like
felt it. I felt
actually.
it. And Modi is top three most powerful human beings on the planet today. Fourth largest economy, Germany being the only country besides America and China that's in the top three. But the leader of Germany is recently elected. He'll soon be removed. Modi is one of these kind of permanent fixtures of politics. Not a dictator, God forbid, but somebody who is so popular amongst the majority of Indians that it looks like he's going to be in power. He's been in power for 12 years. He'll be there for a long
Wow.
time.
Wow.
I would put him in the top three most powerful people on earth, most populous country on earth. Um, he spoke with such heart. I felt it. What he said, that
Yeah.
Israel stands with you firmly and with conviction in this moment and beyond. It was a tearjerker moment to hear the top three most powerful people in the world say that. You see that Israel's standing in the world is something absolutely unprecedented. This is the most power that Jewish people have ever had in their history.
Wow. Wow. Am I allowed to ask you questions about your work with I'm tired, so I can't remember his name. The guy you're working on another book with, he wrote the foreword about you. Can I ask you questions about that?
Of course, I wrote a book with. I was the English editor for a book by Moshe Feiglin. Um, a lot
How
of
is that
the
connected with his other
ideas.
book? Like, is there a central like?
His book was a major influence. I put him in the acknowledgments. It was a major influence on everything I wrote. He's someone who sees Jewish power in a way that I think few do. Um, he's has very crucial ideas. I don't agree with him on everything. I don't agree on everything that was in his book, but I thought his book was very important in explaining how October 7th happened, and that was instrumental. Something that I really, he gave me the ideas that I was able to build on. He's a true Israeli visionary. He was the man he represented the opposition to the Oslo Accords, which more than anything else was the beginning of the road to October 7th. It was a 30-year highway to hell. And it all began with the Oslo Accords, and he was the face of the protest movement against those Oslo Accords. And till today, he's a very active voice in Israeli politics. He's not in the Knesset, but he's on TV all the time, and his books are very popular. He's running now to re-enter the Knesset. We'll see what happens, but it was very interesting to work with him. I think he's a real purist in his ideology, but sometimes I feel maybe a little bit too pure. Sometimes I feel like the practical element could be lacking, but I think he has an incredible impact. He's a political educator, and in my opinion, someone who educates people on politics is more powerful than someone who's actually in politics. As you can see with someone like Tucker Carlson, who can achieve even more than a lot of senators and congressmen and even major, cabinet secretaries can.
So I want to take us to Tucker Carlson, but before we do, so you have two books out right now. You have one book that's coming out in May, and then you have one that you wrote or edited.
I was an editor. I was just an editor for that book. Yes, it's called Israel is Just the Beginning.
And it's out. We can buy it.
That's out. That's on Amazon, yes, and it's an important book. A lot of critical ideas in there, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, actually, I want to buy that because we discussed his ideas and how they align with your ideas, which align with my ideas about Israel, and it's all connected to Jewish history and Judaism. But that will be a conversation for when I read it. So, Mendy, you're the first
Fascinating
person.
book.
What?
It's an absolutely fascinating book. I'd recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna read it, and then I'll tell everyone else, all about it, and they'll read it, and then we'll discuss it. You were the first person I thought about, Mendy, when I watched the Tucker Carlson podcast with Ambassador Huckabee. I wanted to throw things at my laptop as I was watching it. Like the rest of the stuff he does, it was infuriating. It was also comical at times. I was describing him today as like, he okay, Purim is coming up. So I've mentioned this 3 times already today. Purim is coming up. It's the Jewish holiday that everyone knows about. We all, it's happy and joyous, and we dress up. And we're celebrating the downfall of Haman. And Haman had this like specific relish in hating the Jews. Like, it made him truly, genuinely happy. Like, I imagine he laughed just like Tucker Carlson does when he's bashing on Israel like a maniac. Tucker, like, it's his, like, it's an elixir for him to hate Israel and hate the Jews. You're the first person I thought of. I remember you mentioning to me that Tucker is trying to divide Christians and Jews. Can you explain to me like the back end of what Tucker is doing here, because it can be very confusing. Can you explain your thoughts about all of this?
So when I was on your show last time, I described it as kind of like a successionary crisis that people here were seeing already the day after Trump. Is it going to be Rubio? Is it going to be J.D. Vance? And more importantly, each of those figures, to which community within the Republican Party are they going to have to get their bread buttered? Where who's going to give the votes? Who's going to give the money? Um, Presidential campaigns kick into, right around now. We're heading into the midterms, and that's code word for we're already thinking about what that next chapter is going to look like and who the next leader is going to be. And I feel like the only way to really determine what's going to be is it's not really a personal battle between two men. It's more a battle between communities, between constituencies, between segments of the Republican Party, because politicians tend to reflect, especially in a democracy, that's kind of the point. They have to reflect the will of the people. So people like Tucker Carlson, and I brought this up with Moshe Feiglin, they're not really politicians in the traditional sense, but they are political educators, which in the age of social media is more important, in my opinion, than a politician. You change the constituency, you change the actual facts on the ground. And then politicians have no choice but to play along with whatever gains you've made in the wider population. So Tucker Carlson could have run for office. He still can. A man like him would probably win almost anywhere with his talents. Maybe not anymore. But certainly leaving Fox News, that could have been a very obvious step for him. He wants way more power than that. He wants to be the man that politicians turn to when they need to know what to say. He wants to be the man that decides what politicians feel they have to say. And he's doing that now over these past months, and it looks like he'll be here for a while. He's a young man. He's in a way just getting started, and he represents to American Jews, in my opinion, a real threat, because he's trying to take one half of the United States and really turn it not just against Israel. He's trying to turn it against Jews, and politically, that is the most effective means of building a base and building a political message. You go after the Jews, history shows you will automatically become famous. You will automatically have incredible popular support. There's just, it's all that method will always be fruitful to those that embrace it. They will always glean results. And we're seeing that now. We're seeing his star rise. We're seeing it with Candace Owens. We're seeing it with someone like that model from that at an anti-Semitism conference started, being anti-Semitic, and has since gone on tirades against Zionists controlling America, and anyone that supports Israel is a Christian heretic. She was a nobody, and now she's a somebody. So in trying to take over the Republican Party, you're basically paving a path to take over America. And anti-Semites are trying to take over America. That is what is happening. In general, what they accuse us of, that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
They want to pull the strings of power.
that is so true. They want to literally control America, and that's what they're accusing us of. And Mend, what do you think about this? I was very curious what you thought about, Ambassador Huckabee mentioned this biblical promise that God made to us Jews, that the land of Israel belongs to us. Doesn't matter who doesn't like that. Doesn't matter who wants to take it away or who it supposedly belongs to. There is this source in the Torah that says the Jewish people have been given this land. And do you think that's like the separation between church and state? We're supposed to kind of separate religion from politics. Is it appropriate? That's the thing I think about when I think about Jews living in Israel. Hashem gave us this land, but is that an appropriate thing to say as an ambassador?
Well,
Or should we keep that separate and just talk about how Israel vanquished its enemies, and when they tried to attack in all of the Israeli wars, we conquered, we conquered parts of their land and all these things. Is that what we're supposed to say instead of God gave us this land?
I think there's two separate things here. First of all, can an ambassador express their faith publicly and openly? I think absolutely. I think Huckabee, on the one hand, represents Israel. On the other hand, he is his own man, and he's allowed to, there's many limitations on what an ambassador can do. They can't endorse a commercial product, for example, like my book, but they can speak openly about what they believe. They still have a life. And Huckabee, part of the reason he took this interview was not just about Israel; it was about Christian Zionism. He's one of the foremost figures representing Christian Zionists on earth. He's one of their greatest, and eloquent defenders. Because this is not just an attack on Israel, it's an attack on Christian Zionists. And that's something very close to his heart. When you call someone who believes God gave the children of Israel the land of Israel, you call them a heretic for saying that. I think even an ambassador has a right to get up and express his opinion on the matter. Um, the other point being, does Israel need to adopt that message as well? Now, you can tell from my beard that I am a Hasidic Jew. I'm a follower of Chabad and the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Yep.
And the Rebbe was always very insistent that Israel should be much more open and public about, explaining our real connection to the land is not just that we used to live there and not just that we're there now. Our real connection to the land is that it is not just given to us by God, it is still being given. It is currently. When God gives something, it's not a one time. It's not something that happened thousands of years ago. It's something that's happening right now. This is the land that God is always giving to Israel. It's a gift that He wants in our hands. I've always felt that it's such a shame that Israel doesn't speak about this more. Not only because I think it represents the ultimate truth, and yes, there's a church and state. Israel has, Israel's not America. It is a Jewish state. America is not a Christian country as much as the people like Tucker Carlson say it is. It's a majority Christian country, but the government is not a Christian government. In Israel, the government is a Jewish government. The public holidays are Jewish holidays. The rabbanuts, the Israeli rabbis, have control over conversion and marriage. If somebody wants to get married legally, it happens through the rabbanuts.
Yeah.
If they're Jewish, if they're not Jewish, there's other. They get married through Christian clergy. They're not the same in that sense. Israel's built on secular values. I think that's critical. We have this idea in Torah of derech eretz kadma Torah, that the way of the land comes before, religious, before religion, let's say. And I think that's true too. I think it's important not to become a theocracy. Israel's definitely not a theocracy. But I believe if Israel spoke about the biblical connection, they'd be connecting with a lot more people than if they speak about, whether they unearth coins and archaeology. I think a lot more people are into the Bible than they are into archaeology. I was just on Amazon recently, having a look at the ground of where things are standing now with the books on Israel. What are the biggest books? And that if you go to books on Middle East, books on Israel, the top three, all the top three, are the Bible. Those are the most popular books on Israel. That more people believe in the Jewish Bible than we're talking about maybe half the world, much more than half the world. 2 billion Muslims, 2 billion Christians, and 15 million Jews who believe in what's written in the Bible. In fact, the Quran also says that God gave the Jews the land of Israel. Something people don't like to talk about much, but it's in there. We'd be speaking the language of a lot more people. I think the Bible is the most universal language there is. Whether the UN voted or did not vote for Israel, not only was it not practically applicable because there was a war afterwards where we would have either been destroyed or indeed we survived by winning that war. So the UN vote is not what created Israel. It was a war that we survived and endured that created Israel. But I don't think people see in the UN the same legitimacy as they see in the Bible, and I don't know why we continue to talk the language that nobody seems to speak.
Wow. You definitely belong, like right-hand person to the prime minister, at least for now, if you're not the actual prime
Now
minister.
you're embarrassing me. Now you're really embarrassing me.
I really actually believe that. Wow. And there's so much to take in. Can you just go back to Tucker for a minute?
Absolutely.
Is there a reason that he hates Jews? I understand he wants to control the conversation and the direction of actual politicians and politics. But what's at the core of it? Is it just like plain old Jew hatred? Like what's driving it? Why that?
Well, this is a classic question that goes well beyond Tucker. What is the cause of anti-Semitism? For Tucker, I think it wouldn't be that different from his acolytes and his followers who hate Israel and the Jewish people the same way. I think it's a question we always come back to, and it's very difficult to answer. There's, of course, Jewish traditions that it's something spiritual and just kind of, part of the dynamic in the world, as God made the world. He just
Yeah.
created this thing called anti-Semitism and
Thanks
made
for
it a
sharing that.
permanent fixture. It's hard to determine. I do believe that Tucker hates when he's compared to Nazis, and that's really not what I'm doing here. I think Nazis are in a league of their own. However, the two things that Hitler was really animated by were Jews and world domination, and I think they do go together. I think that the Jews are an easy target, but not just that. The Jews have something that that makes them very well known, very respected or disrespected. But the Jews have something that makes them stand out. Um, we've always managed to really assert ourselves in any society we're in. We simply can't be ignored. There's never been a Jewish community that was really that doesn't come up in the history books of the nation where they lived and didn't play a central role. You go back 1,000 years, the Jews were obsessed over in Europe. Wherever they existed in numbers, they were obsessed over. Um, I think the Jews have something very special. It comes from our faith. It comes from our history. It comes from we have some sort of spiritual makeup. I think as a product of what we've been through and how God created this nation. I'm a believing Jew. Um, I think there's something in that mix that has made the Jews have an incredible, very outsized impact. And I don't think it makes Jews better than anyone. I don't think it makes Jews different than anyone. I just believe it makes the values that have animated the Jews and that have inspired us and driven us through all the pains of our exile. Those values are priceless. And those values are, where they're adopted, they change the world. To see the Jewish impact on society, to see how far we've come from the values of ancient Rome, where parents were allowed to kill children and people used to watch other people spear and decapitate each other for fun, where people used to get a kick out of public executions. How far we've come from that value system to a value system that is more closely related with the value system of the Jewish people, where human life is sacred, where life is not about entertainment, it's about having an impact, where people don't want to just enjoy their time here on earth, but actually change it for the better. That has always been the Jewish way. Jews have always had this incredible genius and anxiety about how to make the world better. And wherever we've been, we've made the world better. But some people take that the wrong way. They see that as this people must be doing something wrong to have that type of impact. How can 2% of the United States have left such an impact on America that today there are the Ten Commandments on the top of every U.S. courthouse? Um, how is it that Jewish names are commonplace amongst people? The obvious answer is through Christianity, but it goes on throughout other parts of society and culture where people see that Jews have left an incredible mark. It would be impossible to write a history of America without speaking about the Jewish impact on it. And I think that makes us, a target either of affection or of hatred. But like I said, Jews cannot be ignored.
That's so profound. That is so profound. I actually never read that anywhere. In every society in which we've lived, we've really made our mark. And
Absolutely.
people don't like that.
It hasn't been a controlling mark. We've never been the controlling majority. We've never even had a majority of the influence or anything like that.
No.
But for our size, we've inserted something
Outsized
absolutely.
influence.
Yes, we've definitely had an outsized influence, but it hasn't been a nefarious influence. It's actually been the opposite. I think the Jewish people have had more to do with perfecting the world than perhaps any other, and our impact absolutely defies classical, traditional, historic mechanics. It's something that exists in a league of its own.
You're reminding me of the book you told me to read, The Pity of It All. How much Jews contributed to German society in like the 18 19th century, 1800s, or is
All
it
throughout,
before?
yes, from the 1600s till yeah, absolutely, for
And
300
how
years.
their descendants were all gassed. It's, I mean, I
Well, they were
shouldn't
there for
laugh,
more
but
than 1,000 years, but yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. That is one of the greatest books on Jewish history ever written, and the story it tells is absolutely mind blowing to see that Jews in Germany were the envy of the Jewish world. They were the no Jewish community had ever had the impact that they had. They were at the top of their game, and that's
yeah,
exactly when they were taken down. Well said.
yeah. Well, if there's one thing you want your readers to take from your book, there's one thing you want like to be stamped on their psyche for them to remember, for them to take away from your labor of love, because you were and still are so invested in this book, and I can't wait for everyone to read it. I can't wait to get the book and actually read. I mean, I'm reading it now digitally, but I want to actually hold it. What's one thing you want your readership to take from your work?
More than anything, I want people to take away an optimism, a sense of real belief in the future of the Jewish people in the world. Um, I want them to see the truth about what this has been. There are very difficult parts of that truth. Um, there are very painful pieces of this puzzle because it really is a puzzle, both how Israel endured October 7th and how it came back. Um, it's something that without a sweeping, without putting all those pieces together, you can't see it through, like I said, through each individual part. Um, but taken together, you start to see something that I believe is like seeing the face of God. I think this is the closest. The story of Israel is the closest you can come to seeing God in this world. I think it's an open miracle. I think that miracles, the way they happen, is that up until the very moment where the miracle is completed, and I don't believe we're there yet. We might be on the precipice, but up until the moment the miracle is completed, the anxiety is sky high. I think miracles before they happen are terrifying. I think that's part of the background to a miracle. The run up to a miracle is always harrowing. Think about the Jews at the Red Sea in the
Yeah,
moments before it split, where they're crying out to God, where they're not, to Moses and to God, where there are not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die.
yeah. They start to
Think about
panic.
the Jews in Purim fasting for 3 days because they assumed this was the end. Every single Jew was going to be wiped out by Haman. Um, Miracles tend to come out of incredible darkness, and it's part of amplifying the light that they do. I believe that what we've seen over the past 2 years is the first time that we can look at the state of Israel and know for certain that the Jews did not come here to die. They did not come here to get wiped out by an Iranian nuclear missile. They did not come out here to be wiped out by a seven front invasion. The Jews came here because they are returned to their state for the first time in 2,000 years, and even longer when you think about the last time that we had real sovereignty here, the last time that we were a real power in the region. Um, we've certainly never been a power like today, but I don't think since the time of King Solomon, Israel had the standing it has right now.
Wow.
Um, what this war has proven is that Israel is here forever. If Iran, with seven armies, and with the entire world media crucifying Israel on a daily basis, if Iran could not succeed now, and not just not succeed, but have Israel emerge even stronger, far stronger, um, I think this is more than deterrence. This is an established fact. I write in the book that
It's so powerful, Mendy.
Mount Hermon would be more easily pushed into the sea.
Wow.
And that's the truth. That's the truth. Israel and the Jewish people have established ourselves as a nation on the stage of history once again. Yesterday, having the Prime Minister of India come to Israel and speak to us as equals and to show real brotherhood and real respect, not just love but respect. Um, to see Israel take its place among the nations, that was the Zionist dream. That was God's promise, and we're seeing it unfold before our eyes. And I think that One day everyone will look back at this war and understand this was an open miracle, that this was God asserting his dominance on the earth. One day it'll be obvious. But this book wants to take that a little bit ahead and give you a sneak peek of just what really happened and to show you how the things we're seeing out there are absolutely miraculous. This is the comeback nation. This is God at war.
Wow. Bravo. Wow. That, Mendy,
It's
wow. Now I
exciting.
really understand your title, Comeback Nation. Like I understood it before, but now I really, really get that. Can you tell
Not
everyone
just from
how
October 7th. It's a 4,000 year comeback. Ever since we were slaves in Egypt and then couldn't seem to find our footing on this earth.
yeah,
4,000 years later, we have come back in a whole big way.
well said. I feel like in my mind that was cemented with the pagers. That day, Mendy, I have no words. Like Israel's glory just like
Yeah. I actually met
soared to the
a
heavens.
the book doesn't discuss economics enough because I see them as kind of like, the book's about the war and it focuses on the IDF and the Shin Bet and the Mossad and things like that. However, Israel's economy has exploded 300% since this war started. If you invested, $1 million, one day we'll all be able to invest $1 million. If you could invest $1 million into Israel at the start of this war, you'd now have $3 million. That's 300%. Unheard of for a national stock market to go up 100% per year.
Wow.
To I spoke to a very respected stockbroker yesterday from the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange who told me that the day it really took off was the beepers. The beepers really, once people saw that, they were like, "Wow, this is
That day, the whole
this
world
is
learned that
another
Israel's not to
league."
be messed with. They will come and find you, and they will
I'll get
kill
you.
you if you kill Jews or if you
And
try
the
to harm
precision, the
Israelis.
precision against the officers of the entire officer corps of Hezbollah. It's an amazing story. We speak a lot about it in the book, and of course, its impacts. I served in the war, and I served in a unit that was stationed in the north for the most part. We did do a few months in Gaza, and we'll be doing a few more. But we were in the north for the most part. We're a northern unit. Hezbollah was our enemy. That's who we studied, and the grip they had on the Israeli psyche for so many years. You have to understand that on October 7th, Hezbollah had tents pitched inside Israeli territory. I mean, technically inside Israeli territory. It was right on the border, but in a part of the land that was officially Israel. But, Israel had built its border in a more defensible position a few hundred yards back. And they put tents there as a provocation. And Israel did not remove them for over a year. They just left them there. It might have been a few months, but they just left these tents there. And then obviously on October 7th, Israel was like, screw this. And they just took them all out. But that's who we were dealing. We were dealing with an enemy that had deterred Israel. They were able to just provoke us endlessly. And Israel, they were violating this agreement we had with them for 2006 constantly, where they were supposed to not come south of the Litani River. They were constantly on our border harassing Israeli troops, and Israel was afraid to start a war with them
Wow.
because we thought Hezbollah could cause, absolute pandemonium here in Israel. And in a single day, they have been reduced to what they really always were: a bunch of clowns. That's really what terrorists are. They're a bunch of clowns. Israel's a real country.
So well said. So well said. A bunch of clowns.
A bunch of clowns. I mean, they're dangerous clowns. I'm
He's
not
included.
listening to the dangers that are there, and we have to make sure Hezbollah
Yeah.
does not rebuild. But when we really fight, I mean, that's what this book, if there's one theme you'll see throughout the book, when Israel chooses to fight, when Israel lets the IDF win, they win. The IDF does not lose. It's the political problems that we have that have been plaguing us. It's the inability to use the IDF. It's trying to depend on missile defense and Iron Dome instead of eradicating your enemies, which is what it's meant to be. When you have a genocidal terrorist enemy, you're supposed to get rid of that enemy. Obviously, trying to, as much on the enemy, as focused on the enemy as possible. It's impossible to fight a terrorist embedded in civilian infrastructure without some collateral damage. It's a big tragedy. But to leave them around only causes a much bigger war, which leads to even more tragedy.
Yeah.
And I think Israel's learned that lesson. We are not going to let Syria become a threat. We are not going to let Hezbollah become a threat again.
Yeah.
And we're not going to let Hamas regain its capabilities. Those days are over. The days of having a deadly terrorist army amassed and mobilized on your border for a decade, hoping that you can bribe them with enough money and concessions to keep them quiet, those days are over, and that will never come back.
Amen. Amen. Can you tell everyone how to buy your book and when?
Well, it'll be available in bookstores everywhere, please God, come May 5th. It'll be available for pre-order on the Skyhorse website, and it'll be on Amazon also as well soon for pre-order, God willing, in the next week or two.
And it's called Comeback Nation.
Comeback Nation.
Wow.
How Israel annihilated its enemies and adversaries in a seven-front war for
The
survival.
most badass title and book ever
We got
written
lucky
in
with
the
that one.
history of humankind. Well
It
done.
sounds great. Thank God.
I love you so much. Thank you for coming
Love
on.
you too, Bubba. So good to be on
I
your
can't
show.
wait to have you back on when I actually have the book in my hand. I'm so
All right,
proud of
please
you,
God.
and not just for this book, but for your service of the Jewish people. You guys just heard Mendy talk about how he was in Gaza and how you fought for what, 2 years? Was it 2 years?
Well, I fought for 12 months over the course of 2 years.
Over the course of 2 years for 12 months. I remember us talking to each other on the phone, like randomly, whenever you had service, and it would just fill me with like this like historical awe, like the kind of awe you feel when you look at like something. When I go to a museum, when I was in the Bible Museum, and you see these, like, I don't know, it just takes you back thousands of years. I guess seeing a young Jewish man, specifically one with a beard, in the Jewish military uniform, it just filled me with true awe. And the fact that you're my brother, I'm so proud of you, and thank you for your service, and thank you for this book. And I can't
I'm
wait
proud
to
of
read
you.
it.
All right. Thank you, Bubba. What an honor to be on the show. Thank you.
Bye.